we are moving here for the, I will say, the last panel, but I think we were intending more to have more of a discussion, so more a dynamic, let's say, panel or round table. As you know, or you might, oops, good. As part also of the LABOUR-INT 2, we have foreseen the follow-up activities, let's say, from the colleagues that were part of the LABOUR-INT 1 project. So, and this is why we wanted to invite them, the three of them, to have let's say, like a chat from what they have, because of being part of the first phase of the LABOUR-INT with really concrete activities at the national level, and now with this follow-up, and of course considering as we have discussed previously in the morning, the different the landscape was different from when the first LABOUR-INT was that kicked off until now, of course, with the challenges that the COVID is putting. And I thought it was a very good opportunity to invite my colleague Marco Cilento, not only because he was also I will say the brain behind the LABOUR-INT, but also as head of institutional policy of the ETUC, and involved in our whole, let's say, strategy and work around the recovery, the pillar of social rights, the semester. So it's someone that has a lot of knowledge, and I think it was really important and interesting to have also his view on the LABOUR-INT, thinking of us as in the title, the lessons learned, and considering the future of this LABOUR-INT in a COVID crisis, let's say, context. So I will start giving the floor to the colleagues. So Robin from CEPAG, I give you first the floor to you. Let's try, as I said, to maybe stick into the, let's say, 5 minutes, and then we will pass to Daniela, Maurizio, and finally Marco, and then we will have a round of comments. And also I really encourage you to put some questions on the chat, or if you want, raise your hands. And please also turn on your cameras. That is much more nicer to see each other. So voilà, I give the floor to Robin. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Mercedes. Hello, everyone. I will speak in French so that my presentation will be better. So, yes. Pour que chacun puisse bien situer le contexte, je vais quand même présenter en quelques mots l'action pilote belge, donc, qui a eu lieu en 2017 et 2018 dans le cadre du premier LABOUR-INT. Elle était limitée à la région wallonne, donc la moitié sud du pays francophone, et coordonnée par le CEPAG en collaboration avec la FGTB wallonne et le Monde des possibles. L'action était centrée uniquement sur le public demandeur d'asile, donc toujours en attente d'une décision sur sa demande de protection. L'action pilote, elle a été divisée en 2 phases principales. Une première d'analyse de la situation en région wallonne et de la définition d'une méthodologie de travail qui soit adaptée. Donc, il s'est agi dans cette phase de rencontrer divers acteurs impliqués dans l'intégration des migrants sur le marché du travail en Wallonie et à Bruxelles, ce qui a permis de rédiger début 2018 un rapport d'enquête focalisé sur les différents obstacles auxquels sont confrontés les demandeurs d'asile au moment d'essayer d'entrer sur le marché du travail wallon. On en a déjà évoqué certains juste avant, c'était notamment la méconnaissance de la langue, l'incertitude quant à l'issue de la demande d'asile, la localisation des centres d'accueil ou encore le manque de coordination entre les différents intervenants. Donc, ce travail il a permis de construire un module de formation par un formateur du Monde des possibles afin d'aider justement les demandeurs d'asile à surmonter les difficultés qui avaient été relevées dans le rapport. Et ce module de formation, il visait à favoriser la réussite de tests d'admission en centre de promotion sociale pour accéder à des formations professionnalisantes en maçonnerie et en restauration. La deuxième phase du projet, elle consistait justement à appliquer ce module de formation. Ça a été fait à 3 reprises au sein de centres d'accueil pour demandeurs d'asile de la Croix-Rouge. C'est au total plus de 50 personnes qui ont participé à ces formations sans réaliser de sélection entre elles sur base de leur chance de rester en Belgique à l'issue de leur procédure d'asile en fonction de leur nationalité. Et les résultats de ces sessions, ils ont été très positifs puisque la quasi-entièreté des participants ont réussi ensuite le test d'admission en formation en centre de promotion sociale. Comme Mercedes l'a rappelé, effectivement, ici, on était dans le cadre de LABOUR-INT 2 et d'un suivi, en plus des actions pilotes qui ont été présentées, de celles qui s'étaient tenues dans le cadre du premier LABOUR-INT. Dans le cadre de ce suivi, différentes actions ont été réalisées, notamment des interventions publiques. Uniquement en 2019, le CEPAC a participé à différents événements en vue de promouvoir les activités réalisées dans le cadre de l'action pilote belge et a également participé à la réalisation d'une vidéo par l'Organisation internationale du travail. À côté de ces interventions publiques, différentes réunions ont eu lieu en 2019 et 2020 qui permettaient d'un côté de discuter directement avec des acteurs de l'insertion socio-professionnelle des bonnes pratiques dégagées par l'action pilote belge de LABOUR-INT, mais également d'un autre côté de prendre connaissance des actions mises en œuvre par ces acteurs en vue de favoriser également cette insertion pour demandeurs d'asile et réfugiés. Mais en parallèle à tout ce travail de dissémination, la mise en œuvre concrète des modules de formation créés dans le cadre de l'action pilote belge a pu continuer au-delà de 2018 parce que le Monde des possibles a obtenu un financement de l'Agence fédérale pour l'accueil des demandeurs d'asile pour poursuivre ses formations en 2019 au sein cette fois de centres fédéraux d'accueil. En 2019, c'est donc environ 90 demandeurs d'asile qui ont pu bénéficier de ces modules de formation pour tenter de réussir le test d'entrée en centre de promotion sociale pour suivre une formation professionnelle qui soit qualifiante. Et le projet a été renouvelé en 2020, même si évidemment, vu les circonstances qu'on connaît, il a été mis en œuvre difficilement. La crise sanitaire a eu pour conséquence que la formation a dû être partiellement réorientée avec un accent mis plutôt sur l'introduction approfondie du marché du travail en vue d'une orientation en fin de formation vers des missions régionales pour l'emploi. Et donc, on n'était plus ici dans le contexte de formation professionnalisante. Suite à la deuxième vague, il y a également des formations qui ont dû être annulées et remplacées par un suivi et une orientation à distance, malheureusement. Mais c'est quand même au total, en 2020, donc 40 demandeurs d'asile qui ont été accompagnés. Alors, le projet LABOUR-INT 2 en Belgique, il a pris fin le 18 décembre 2020, le jour de la Journée internationale des migrants, par un webinaire qui a réuni jusqu'à 75 personnes provenant des 3 régions du pays et d'une multitude de secteurs d'activité. Il s'agissait de présenter une nouvelle fois les actions réalisées dans le cadre du projet et l'évolution des modules de formation, mais également dans la philosophie multipartite qui a caractérisé ce projet tout du long, de donner la parole à d'autres acteurs de l'insertion socio-professionnelle des personnes migrantes, afin de montrer justement aux participants que de plus en plus d'initiatives sont mises en place dans cette matière. Et donc le projet, il a en tant que tel, comme je le disais, pris fin en décembre en Belgique, mais nous pensons et nous espérons qu'il aura pu ouvrir la voie à des améliorations de certains des écueils qui ont été relevés dans le rapport d'enquête dont je parlais, qui a été réalisé en 2018. Comme je l'ai dit aussi, les initiatives qui visent à une amélioration de l'accès au travail pour les demandeurs de protection internationale se sont développées, mais en parallèle, on a également constaté, on continue de le constater, une meilleure articulation entre les différents acteurs de l'insertion socio-professionnelle. Je pense ici notamment au service régional pour l'emploi bruxellois Actiris, qui est occupé à mettre en place une plateforme de rencontres physiques et digitales de rencontres entre ces acteurs et à laquelle le CEPAG est parti, mais il y a évidemment d'autres initiatives qui vont dans ce sens. Et même si beaucoup de travail reste à réaliser en Belgique, ce genre d'initiative augure des améliorations certaines. Voilà, j'ai essayé d'être le plus court possible. Merci.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you for the brief and concise, also taking into account all the work that you have done before, and also connecting this to the COVID and the second wave, and how also things, for example, the training has, been cancelled, and how this also been, a new change of way of working on that, a little bit we need to rethink, ways of working and how also to better support the migrant and the asylum seekers population. I'll pass quickly to Daniel from the DGB Bildungswerk. Daniel, I give you the floor for your contribution. Thanks.
Thank you, Mercedes. And at first, let me thank all the colleagues and partners of ETUC who made it possible that we can participate in the project LABOUR-INT and that it worked so well during the last month and years. I'm happy to give you some insights on the German context. I would say that the multi-stakeholder approach worked during the last years in Germany. Many refugees and third country nationals found training and work in Germany. The numbers looked good before the pandemics. Many actors joined in the integration process, and they are still in the process. Of course, there were problems and challenges. We saw some in our counseling centers, even exploitation. We saw even exploitation of third country nationals in our counseling centers. But yeah, then the pandemic came, and the pandemic hit the migrants very hard, of course, all over Europe and in Germany especially, I would say, or maybe in a different way, but it kind of smashed the multi-stakeholder approach, and the numbers went down. So we decided in LABOUR-INT that we will do an international conference. We did it last September, where we discussed the topic of migration, integration, refugees, labor market integration, and the pandemic. Thanks to everyone who joined. We especially discussed which key factors were relevant before the pandemic and maybe even more relevant after or during the pandemic to integrate refugees and third country nationals. I will give you 4 examples of these key factors out of 11, which we identified. I took the 4 because these topics weren't mentioned today so very often. So I took at first the key factor, of course, is the involvement of all relevant stakeholders. It's the key issue for collaboration, especially in Germany. We have a big network of funding and of acting of immigration officers, the employment agencies, the qualification bodies, trade unions, the companies, of course, the advisory structures and chambers. This is and will be the key factors. The second key factor is the business culture. We identified that in Germany especially, but maybe in all other countries as well, the business culture of many companies has to be improved. We need a culture of integration, diversity, and social partnership, especially in crisis, I would say. It's not a culture for good weather, I would say, but we need it especially in times of crisis, and we have to improve our structures. I will give you a sentence. One participant of the conference said during the conference, if a company generally finds it difficult to train new colleagues, it will also find it difficult to train new migrant colleagues. So you need the structures to welcome new workers within your firm and create a culture of recognition and participation within your company. And I think that's a very, very big key issue of integration in the labor market. The third key factor is you have to manage jointly the factors living, housing, and working. Bad living conditions endangers integration. You know, if you can't sleep, if you can't learn where you live, then integration is very hard to achieve, and disintegration processes will start. So we have to really talk more about the question how people live and how housing is organized for newly arrivals, especially for us, of course, in Germany. The fourth key factor is we need more networking and network building. We had a lot of networking and network building during the pandemic. It's sometimes hard to establish this network or keep them living. But we saw that, of course, together you can achieve more. And I think that's one big lessons learned out of the German example. And I hope that this spirit of collaboration will last during the next years. And this last point leads me to the questions where future activities could aim at. I would say networking is every time the networking of organizations, like we said here, a networking of stakeholders of organization, but it's also a networking of people. And during my time or our time in LABOUR-INT, I think we all together established this group of people, not only of organizations with so many backgrounds and with so much energy. So I think we would need this personal approach to networking to be more visible and active and strong, especially in these hard times. I think we need support for promoters for migration and integration, and we need confident faces from all these organizations who can be seen here, who stand for inclusion within their organization, but also within the society. And I could imagine a strong European network of integration influencers, I would call them, and activists with a big visibility, maybe with a strong professional campaigning. So this could be one way, I think, to establish these stakeholder network to a more personal activists network from all organizations who were involved. Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for that kind of positive and could be a future of this. And I really like that idea of the influencers, as it's now also kind of in the mood, the cool to be this is social media influencers. So I'm thinking that, as I was saying also previously, I think we have been capitalizing for the past 5 years or even more, all this network of organization, but as you say, also people, all of us, and all of our, let's say, networks at the national level. I've been seeing like the colleagues in Greece, many of the NGOs, also grassroots organizations, migrant associations. So I think that is something that, we need to capitalize and not lose it. And especially, as also Daniel was saying, in a COVID situation where we know that also, the discrimination and maybe the negative, seeing like the migrants as, the ones probably again being the stealing our jobs and all this and everything. I think we need to fight against this. So I think also very important what you mentioned about also the workplace and how we need to work on a more diversity integration also at the workplace, also something that is quite of some trade union objective. So I give now the floor to Maurizio, our colleague from FISASCA CIS Milano and also representing ANOLF Milano. Maurizio.
Buongiorno a tutti, grazie Mercedes, grazie Marco, grazie ai colleghi della CES per questa opportunità. Innanzitutto parlo a nome di FISASCAT Milano e a nome di ANOLF Milano, che sono i due capofila che hanno seguito l'azione pilota di LABOUR-INT 1 e poi il follow-up di LABOUR-INT 2. Nei pochi minuti a disposizione concentro l'intervento su 3 punti. Che cosa avremmo dovuto fare, che cosa abbiamo fatto e cosa dobbiamo fare nel futuro. Cosa avremmo dovuto fare? Facile, avremmo dovuto realizzare un convegno per spiegare quelli che erano stati le azioni successive ai grandi risultati ottenuti nell'azione LABOUR-INT 1, che vi ricordo ha portato al collocamento della totalità praticamente dei richiedenti asilo formati che ancora oggi stanno lavorando nei settori e nelle aziende nei quali sono stati inseriti. Il convegno non abbiamo potuto realizzarlo perché purtroppo la data è caduta esattamente nella prima settimana di inizio del lockdown nazionale che ha bloccato tutta quanta l'Italia e quindi diciamo che si conclude così la prima parte del mio intervento. Il convegno purtroppo è saltato. Che cosa abbiamo invece fatto? Innanzitutto non abbiamo ovviamente cessato di rimanere in contatto con le persone e abbiamo organizzato una serie di videoconferenze, perché ormai è l'unico modo che abbiamo per rimanere in contatto con le persone, nelle quali abbiamo dato informazioni su quella che è e continua ad essere l'attualità. È di questo minuto il fatto che ci è arrivato un'ANSA per cui la Lombardia, per esempio, rientra nuovamente in zona arancione rinforzata, e quindi abbiamo questo continuo cambio di normative che è necessario diffondere tra tutte quante le persone, soprattutto tra le persone che hanno meno possibilità di avere accesso a queste informazioni. Quindi informazioni continue su quelle che sono state le continue normative sulle restrizioni dovute alla pandemia, così come su quelle che sono state tutte quante le misure messe in atto dal governo per tentare di arginare la crisi dovuta alla pandemia. Ci sono stati una serie di bonus, di ristori che sono stati stanziati dal governo e che sono andati anche a favorire la situazione dei lavoratori e dei beneficiari, delle persone che noi seguiamo. Dal 1° giugno al 15 di agosto il governo precedente, perché tra le altre cose in Italia non è mancata anche una crisi di governo durante la pandemia, il governo precedente ha emanato un provvedimento straordinario di regolarizzazione dei cittadini stranieri presenti in Italia senza permesso di soggiorno, e in questo provvedimento di regolarizzazione la maggior parte delle persone sono proprio quei richiedenti asilo che erano in Italia in attesa del riconoscimento del loro status e che hanno giustamente tentato di essere regolarizzati attraverso questa sanatoria. La sanatoria ha visto 207.000 domande presentate in tutta quanta Italia. Vi do 2 dati aggiornatissimi perché è uscito oggi un rapporto sulla situazione. Su 207.000 domande, 1.500 sono soltanto i permessi di soggiorno ad oggi concessi da agosto fino ad oggi, quindi l'1% dei permessi di soggiorno rispetto alle domande presentate. Vi do un dato su Milano: delle 26.000 domande presentate, ad oggi neanche una persona è stata convocata in prefettura e neanche una persona ha ottenuto il permesso di soggiorno. Questo che cosa vuol dire? Che la regolarizzazione era nata innanzitutto per risolvere la questione del blocco degli ingressi dei lavoratori stagionali, quindi era nata per dare respiro agli agricoltori, per impiegare le persone necessarie per la raccolta dei vari prodotti stagionali. In realtà ha escluso, al di là degli agricoltori, la maggior parte dei settori lavorativi nei quali trovano impiego i lavoratori e le lavoratrici straniere in Italia, quindi la maggior parte delle persone si è riconvertita in collaboratori domestici o in assistenti familiari, trovando contratti di lavoro spesso fittizi per provare ad ottenere un permesso di soggiorno. Il 98% delle domande sono state presentate come colf e badanti. Dicevo che ad oggi l'1% delle domande sono state analizzate e si è fatto un calcolo, per esempio su Milano, che se andiamo avanti con questi ritmi ci vorranno 30 anni per andare a dare il permesso di soggiorno a tutte quante le persone che hanno presentato la domanda. Questo non è di poco conto, perché se questa regolarizzazione era nata per dare un permesso di soggiorno alle persone che si trovano in Italia in maniera irregolare, in realtà abbiamo persone che possono circolare regolarmente in Italia, circolare per modo di dire, viste le restrizioni, ma se il datore di lavoro muore, se il datore di lavoro li licenzia, se il datore di lavoro era fittizio, queste persone rimangono in Italia senza la possibilità di trovare un nuovo datore di lavoro o di regolarizzare quel rapporto di lavoro presso il quale effettivamente svolgono. abbiamo fatto questo. Che cosa dovremmo fare per il futuro? Come ANOLF e come FISASCAT siamo coinvolti in altre 2 azioni pilota. Una è il progetto ERIAS, che dopo aver formato e inserito 10 persone prevede altre 40 persone da formare e da inserire nel mercato del lavoro, e poi, come sappiamo, molti di noi sono coinvolti nel progetto Union Migrant Net. La situazione di pandemia impone però una riflessione su quello che abbiamo fatto fino a questo momento e che sicuramente non potrà essere fatto nello stesso modo in futuro. Penso per esempio alla selezione delle persone o alla formazione, soprattutto alla formazione professionalizzante, che è molto complicato fare a distanza, online, attraverso uno schermo, e quindi su questa cosa dobbiamo riflettere su come trovare nuove modalità per sviluppare quello che è stato il metodo LABOUR-INT e che ha caratterizzato il successo della prima azione pilota. Una seconda criticità riguarda il fatto che bisogna anche tentare di conciliare quella che è la formazione di inserimento lavorativo dei nuovi arrivati, che comunque le persone continuano ad arrivare, con la riqualificazione delle persone che sono state espulse dal mercato del lavoro durante la pandemia, perché non bisogna dimenticare che la maggior parte dei settori lavorativi colpiti dalla crisi sono proprio quei settori lavorativi dove per di più i lavoratori e le lavoratrici straniere trovano impiego. E infine ci sono però alcuni settori, penso per esempio avremmo dovuto con Union Migrant Net inserire i beneficiari nella ristorazione, soprattutto nella ristorazione aziendale. In Italia in questo momento la ristorazione aziendale è ferma perché con lo smart working le persone che lavorano negli uffici non hanno più bisogno di andare in mensa a mangiare, quindi questo settore che fino a poco tempo fa era un settore trainante dove trovavano impiego lavoratori e lavoratrici straniere, oggi invece è un settore in forte crisi. Ultima considerazione, una considerazione un po' più politica, sicuramente il cambiamento che ha caratterizzato la nostra società e che quindi impone una riflessione, deve imporre una riflessione anche dal punto di vista della normativa, sia dal punto di vista nazionale, una normativa nazionale che non può più in termini di immigrazione continuare a ragionare sull'emergenza e sulle regolarizzazioni spot che, come si è visto dai dati, portano risultati negativi che sono molto maggiori dei risultati positivi, e a livello europeo è necessario tentare di mettiamola così, ridurre un po' quello che è il mondo dei sogni rispetto ai flussi migratori, perché tutti vorremmo attrarre i grandi capitali, va benissimo investire sulla Blue Card o su quelle direttive che tentano di attrarre i grandi capitali, ma bisogna anche considerare quella che è la realtà del mercato del lavoro dei paesi, soprattutto un paese come il nostro, dove il mercato del lavoro continua ad attrarre in maniera informale, e quindi invece bisognerebbe garantire ingressi legali a queste persone. Dicevo, continua a garantire l'ingresso in maniera informale presso quei settori lavorativi che sono meno qualificati. Grazie.
Thank you. Grazie, Maurizio. Thank you for the good overview, because I thought it was really interesting as the regularization, let's say, campaign in Italy happening last year due to the COVID, and the role also that the trade union had in that, in supporting the workers to submit the applications, but also, as you said, the access to information. And it's also coming to our Union Migrant Net network and colleagues really supporting the migrant population, especially in particular, for example, in regularizations campaign, but also more in general, also in terms of how, being the most vulnerable ones, and also, as Mauricio was mentioning, the sectors also being impacted by the pandemic are the more overrepresented by migrant workers. So I think those are the elements that I wanted to touch upon. And I think also what you mentioned about the EU level and this, and I think E2C was quite vocal, at least, and critical for the Pact on Asylum and Migration on framing labor migration as only being attracting only the skills, the highly skills, the talents, but as also Mauricio was mentioning, we need regular channels on labor migration across the skills and across sectors. So not going more onto that, because I have Marco Cilento, happy to have him like just here and not virtual. So I give you the floor for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mercedes. Actually, it was almost 1 year, I think, that we didn't meet each other. So it's quite a new thing, let's say, having a conference here in the office. Thank you for having invited me. And I also would like to take inspiration from what Maurizio said, because my idea today was exactly to try to imagine how we can continue to use this fantastic experience of LABOUR-INT, as we have heard also these great activities and events that took place in Belgium and Germany, but also we have other countries, Naples, Greece, etc. But probably because of the consequences of the COVID, we have probably rethink also the LABOUR-INT project. Not only the LABOUR-INT project, I will just prepare some slides to try to be clear in what I mean in rethinking the way we can operate for the integration of migrants. Let me share the screen. Okay, rethinking is one of our brands. Let me advertise a bit in activities. We have elaborated, okay, I will tell you more about the more in details of the rethinking activities, but this is an exercise that we are all doing in DTUC, trying to design the scenarios we have in the post-COVID, in the COVID and post-COVID situation, in order to really imagine how we can continue to obtain the same results, but in a totally new context. And of course, you know, the first thing we are trying to understand is what happens to migrants. What happens to migrants in the COVID crisis? What will happen when also the most dramatic moments of the crisis will be over, hopefully soon, with the arrival of the vaccines. And of course, I just want to mention that now there is a quite good, huge consensus on the fact that migrants are one of the groups that suffered more the consequences of the crisis. I just mentioned two, three data because they are important to understand what we can actually do in the future. First of all, you see the red title, but when you go in the graph, the migrants are in total black. So the black column. And normally this graph shows how in almost all the countries, almost all countries have migrants have jobs that are less likely to be performed remotely. It means that it's also they are more exposed, having not the capacity, not the possibility, because of several situations to perform their jobs remotely, they are more likely to lose the job. And in fact, if you take the change in employment by big groups, you will see that in many European, non-European countries, the gap in the black bar is quite larger than the blue one. So this applies to employment, to be less employed, but if you take the unemployment measures, is exactly the same, and we will try to understand why, because when we have to imagine how we can continue to make concrete actions to support migrants, it's important to know these kind of things. So we have said that migrants are vulnerable, and during the crisis, there is a specific commitment that this group must be supported. Second thing, this is a graph that we always used 1 year ago, and it shows that the migration flows are independent from some big societal trends. But one is particularly important to understand if we will attract or not third country nationals in Europe, which is the demographic trends. The demographic trends probably do not interfere, so it's not a sign on how many migrants we can really expect, but we know the demographic change will change the composition of the migration flows. And here in this graph, we put in the same picture the situation of people that are leaving the countries, people coming from third countries, or people exercising free movements. So the demographic trends, you will see that activates a lot of is strongly influenced by people leaving the countries. If you see Romania, Hungary, their declining demographic trends is quite linked to immigration. On the other side, there are countries that are supposed to have demographic trends that are positive just because of migration, like Germany, France. And this is very crucial for the sustainability of their economic models. And this is, we see that this graph shows the trends also both in years of economic decline, both in years of economic growth. So the next slides try to say that the economic cycle, once again, can change the composition of flows and dynamics, but we are always in front of large movement of people, so, or increasing a number of people movements. And this led me us estimate or create a scenario where also when the GDP in the next years will be strongly influenced by lockdown measures, and then will be a decline in the GDP, and then we will have a quick rebound, the migration flows will become stable in terms of absolute numbers, but groups inside these stable measures can change. And this is quite important to achieve some conclusion in order to understand what kind of people, because what we are interested in is to offer specific assistance to specific individuals that are persons, but to be prepared to offer the correct service to the actual needs of people. Let's try to understand a bit more this concept. We said flows will probably remain stable, but the composition will change. This change will depend on some global trends. I just mentioned the most important, but probably there are more. One is the impact of COVID-19 worldwide. We don't know exactly how the world will be from here in a few months because we didn't see in full the economic consequences of the COVID crisis. And we can expect, for instance, that many countries, developing countries, will have huge debts. And we don't know if the international community will provide answer to this increased debt. And if there are no answers, there will be a lot of poverty that will be transformed in a greater flows, for instance. So there is a question mark there. It depends on the choices we take together today, on the next days, but we cannot really predict. Climate change remains a challenge for people movement. So it's one of the root causes, and this will remain. And another things that we cannot predict is the geopolitical stability and wars in our neighborhood countries. Knowing that these trends will probably activate more, let's say, refugees, more asylum seekers, rather than economic migrants that you can plan. No, this issue of asylum seekers, or let's say people of movements that are driven not by labor but by other reasons, will stay dominant because of these factors. But if this will be translated into actual changes in your country, in the next months we will try to make an analysis a bit more, let's say, details, we try to introduce some granularity in our analysis in order to catch some aspects. For instance, demographic structure of the countries are crucial to understand how the country will be open to new flows. The overall well-being is your country attractive or not in terms of well-being? And you will see that this will be a crucial point. Working conditions, are we able to ensure or not good working conditions to people arriving in our country in order to understand if we will attract what kind of migrants and how many will come or not. Another important element, the economic structure. We know from the crisis that, for instance, tourism, if your country depends a lot on tourism, construction, and activities that will suffer a lot from the COVID crisis, you will have less people arriving in your country, or you will have a higher unemployment among migrants, for instance. So probably less flows, but more migrants remaining without a job, and that must be helped. There are other elements, educational divide and digital divide. The risk is that as low skilled workers will suffer more, and the higher skilled will probably have less problems in the years to come. The educational divide that normally hits the migrant population will be a crucial factor. Once again, we will probably have more migrants without a job, and this will have specific consequences. And the high skilled can be probably better off. But the problem is that's the flows, and the residential population cannot be treated differently if they are high or low skilled. I mean, there is an issue here that we can absolutely to address. And the digital divide will be quite crucial for the reasons I said a few moments ago. The possibility to catch the opportunities of digitalization in these difficult times will create a lot of problems to the groups of population that cannot catch these opportunities. Concerning LABOUR-INT future, sorry, I'm really mentioning the big topics because otherwise it will take too long, but I hope that this will create the possibility for us to think on how to develop. My last slide is that, let's say, concerning LABOUR-INT, what I would like to try to have also for the work we are doing in general for the economic and social development in Europe. First of all, the work will remain a factor of integration, and the LABOUR-INT, let's say, main characteristics are still valid. And I think we have to build on that. So all these experiences you presented to us are absolutely important and will remain an asset for us. The asylum policies will be turbulent. Let's say we will not have a European solution. This is clear. And it means that we have to do with what we have. This is so on the one hand, we should not feel frustrated by the fact that we not have a European asylum policy that respect human beings, etc. But it's also an encouragement for all of us to make an additional efforts to focus on this group of migrants that, in my view, will remain one of the more important flows or reasons for people movements in the future. And then if I have to think on how to redesign our priorities, we have worked a lot with the internships, in the past, internships, assistance to work. Probably we have teaching Italian, languages. Okay,
always a relevant
language,
exactly.
Anyway, so for instance, closing the digital gap should enter in our radar. Closing the gender gap, because women is the other group, especially women migrants, and we have plenty of data on that. Internship should be combined with the active labor market policies. Just a few moments ago, the Commission presented a very important recommendation that provide us a very good orientation in this regard. And then including, yes, bringing new arrived migrants, the labor market will still be a priority. But frankly speaking, I think that's helping the transition job to job for migrants that are going to lose the job in this period is even more crucial, because if you are staying for years in the country, so you have a long-term resident status, for instance, you can benefit from all the protection the labor market can offer to you. But if you are arrived for a little time ago and you found the crisis when you arrived, or even worse, you are in undeclared work or in very precarious conditions, you risk to be completely abandoned, to be left alone, and probably your situation can also be worse of the let's say the limbo that many, for instance, asylum seekers are. So the asylum seekers are in a limbo, but you can have people that can also stay in a very worse situation. We have to reflect probably on this and to see if the case can help redesigning the activities in future. These are the things that I wanted to say. So I thank you very much. On the rethinking, I hope that Mercedes can share the link. We have prepared 8 videos to understand where the world is going in this period. They are called Rethinking. If you want, you can, we will share the link. If you are interested, you can look at this video. They start today. Every week we will have a new one. Feel free to join us in this exercise.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Marco. And for sure, we will send in the chat the link or otherwise after the conference with all the materials. And yeah, thank you, Marco, always inspiring us and kind of with all these elements and graphics and data, which sometimes is difficult also to understand. So it's was for us when we were discussing this, and I think it's a quite of a momentum also at European level, and that's why also I profit that Marco is here, because actually today the action plan on the implementation of the European Pillar of Social Rights has already been out publicly, because we were all waiting like 11 o'clock. And because I think, if I recall the beginning of the conference with the Commission, the person from the Commission, and also a little bit what Luca and other colleagues from the social partners were mentioning, well, we have, of course, the European Partnership for Integration, that it was part also of the action plan on integration and inclusion. But also we were missing a little bit that migration, let's say, an integration element in the action plan on the European Pillar of Social Rights. So I will also try to pose the question to Marco. What can you say a little bit in terms of your views on the actually released now action plan on the pillar? How maybe ETUC and all of you participants, members, also MigrantNet can help or shape somehow into this. And also I'm thinking as well, because there is also European level, the future of Europe, the conference also, and if that could be an element, or if ETUC is also thinking of somehow some also possible, I would say, insights of the migration and how to rethink a little bit our, the world that it's going to change. Marco, very briefly, because I know that we are a little bit, we need to actually, we also have the closing remarks, but, and of course, colleagues, if you have comments, please use the chat, or if you have any questions for Marco or for the colleagues, Maurizio, Daniel, or Robin, please do so now, while Marco can reply to some of the questions that I just make. Thank you, Marco.
Finally, I would say...
Me? As you.
Sorry. Okay. Today, actually, the Commission presented an action plan implementing the European Pillar of Social Rights. I always say that the European Pillar of Social Rights is a very good instrument, but doesn't pay too much attention to people in movement, especially third country nationals, but also free movement. It's not very well, but here there is a lot that we can do to use the rights and the actions that are defined in the pillar, but it's up to you really to better identify what you have been able to do with some lobby actions that involve all of us, also DG Home, to mention the problem of equal treatment of migrants and to make the integration plan for integration an integrating part of this action plan. So this reference will allow us to bring the topic, and frankly speaking, this action plan will be endorsed in Porto on the 7th of May, 7th or 8th of May. Probably what we can do as the work, I mean, in terms of cooperation, let's say from the work we are doing as people in charge of the pillar and you for the migration, is to try to understand from now to Porto what are the things that we can really put on the table in order to make these rights more accessible to migrants. In terms of the conference on the future of Europe, look, I think that when we talk about the future of Europe, I think that's one of the biggest achievements of the European Union is to offer us a European passport. Because we want this conference talking about things that matters to people. No, really it matters to people. But normally the passport concern identity belonging to specific institutions. I probably would like to discuss in future, if you allow, Marcello, etc., to something that could give let's say, a passport of labor rights, where all people staying in Europe can really enjoy benefit from this right only because they are in Europe, they grew in Europe, they let's talk a sort of use only of the European workers, where the fact that you are there and that you belong to this society can automatically offer you a number of rights, opportunities and freedoms. I think this is a topic that should be absolutely part of the conference in the future of Europe, and we can work together to make this idea growing. Probably there will be others. There will be a huge competition on what's the idea should emerge. But I think for working together, this can be a good point that people will love to discuss about, I think.
Thank you, Marco. And indeed, yeah, thank you, Marco. Indeed, we will work together on that, planning this the future of Europe conference and all the rest of the different initiatives at European level. Thank you, colleagues, for the comments, the congratulating, and I think thank you very much to all of you, and thank you again for the colleagues in this panel, Maurizio, Daniel, Aroy, for the hard work. Thank you, Marco, again for being here.